is the brains of the outfit. Yeah, no. Wendy was absolutely important in the beginning of North House because she knew how to write grants and she knew how to organize things. And, well, she's a good writer, and so there's a lot of reasons to thank Wendy. Yes. And that's just pricking the surface. But it's nice to be here. I have so many fond memories of the Gunflint Trail and SAG and Otter Track, and it's just fun to see all the faces again. I tell you, this has been an area of the world that has some of the most special people that I can think of, and I've been around a lot of special people. I'd like to give you a little background of where I came from and you know, a little bit about my life, so you can put it in some context. So maybe what you hear as we go along here makes some sense. The first thing is I came from kind of a unusual beginning, and I don't have a slide of this, but I got a picture of myself when, I don't know, I must have been 4 years old in this picture. And this is my grandpa Axel and my other grandpa Harold. Harold was a Lutheran minister, and Axel was a mortician. He was one of the very first people that went through the mortician school after the influenza, the Spanish influenza. And he did it because he didn't mind. You know, he was one of these guys that's just like this. There was never any emotion. Nobody got upset with, and so he didn't mind taking down a dead farmer who'd been hanging in the barn for 2 weeks. He would do that. They needed someone to do that. Well, he had a bad ticker, and my grandma was always worried about what, you know, don't work too hard, always on him. But he was an operator. He would get things started. He started a pool hall in Malacca, Minnesota. He started another pool hall in Onamia, Minnesota, called the Klondike Casino. He had 2 hardware stores in Malacca and Onamia, and what else did he do? There was a couple other things that he was involved in, but he loved St. Olaf College, and he would send kids that needed a college education to St. Olaf. And no one knew about it. No one knew about it. He knew the superintendent of Malacca and Onamia, and he would find out who were the good students, and, you know, did they have any resources, and he would come up with the money to make that happen. You know, when he started, I heard stories, you know, because he would never say anything. He was a quiet Norwegian, you know. He kept to himself, but he knew everybody, and he always knew who needed what, and what was really going on in that family, and what was that young girl over there who was so talented, and, you know, what's she going to do when she's done with high school. And so, and Harold was a Lutheran minister. He spoke a sermon in Norwegian and in English every Sunday for 45 years, and in Malacca, the Lutheran church, the back door of the Lutheran church, faced the back door of the Swedish church. and the joke was that the Swedes would say that they should bury the Norwegians with their heads out of the ground so the monument would last longer. and the Norwegians would say that Christ never could have been born in Norway because there's no wise men to the east. and there was no way of changing any of that. It was just chiseled in stone. But the Lutheran church was bigger than the Swedish Lutheran church. Anyway, these two guys were very influential. I hung out, much like you can see here. They liked having me come along. They enjoyed my company, and I certainly enjoyed theirs. And Axel, oh yeah, the other thing that he did was he was a fur buyer. His brothers, what's his brother's name now? Roy and Louie. They ran a fur business, and they dealt in eggs, and they dealt in all kinds of stuff. There's jack of all trades, and Axel would dip in and say, who doesn't have a car that they can bring their furs in? So Axel would go and visit, And everybody liked Axel because when he would go and buy a fur from someone, he bought from the guys that had really good furs. They prepared them well, and they were really good. And so he would come with eggs. So hand out eggs to the wife, and they loved him. And so I was along. So I would go to these little shacks, these little shanties that they lived in, and was welcomed. And I just loved going with them to these little camps. These little hovels back in the woods. And as a matter of fact, there was one couple. Now here's the thing, is a retrieval, the retrieval of names. One couple on the Mille Lacs Reservation who remembered me when I started working on the reservation. It was Rose and, it doesn't make any difference. At any rate, they remembered me years later. They remembered Axel. It was so much fun to meet those people. And so I guess weaving this together, learning about the people on SAG was like going back into those times. I've always enjoyed old people, what they had to say. I got kind of burned out on school because everyone was the same age, you did the same thing, and drive you through the same loop and holes and whatnot. And I was just an absolute terrible student because I was always dreaming about what I was going to make. Drew a lot of drawings. Heard about guys that were prisoners of war, in the Second World War, where they would design a whole building, in their head. And it's like, I can do that. So I did a lot of that. And my grandpa, Harold, he always said, well, don't worry about those bad grades on your report card. He says, it's just little pieces of paper. They're nothing. They don't mean anything. He says, Mark, you and I, we're didactic learners. We're automatic learners. We're autodidactic, he says. We learn on our own. He says, you want to learn how to read? Get a Field and Stream magazine. Get a Popular Mechanics magazine. You'll learn how to read from that. You'll be fine. Don't worry about what these other people are saying. So it's like, yes. Because he was a scholar. He was a scholar. He knew what he was talking about. He was a smart guy. So somehow I managed to struggle through school and get the hell out of there, and life just got better and better. So anyway, that's just a little bit about where I come from and whatnot. So when we started the school in Grand Marais, the folk school, I wanted to put something together for the youngsters in school. The third, fourth, and fifth grades is what I proposed that we put together some programming for them. That was real. So I taught a class. One of the classes was the toboggan class. And all the students would make a toboggan, a little model toboggan like this. So you learn how to bend wood and how to make spin the tump line, and how to measure things out. Why do things slide on ice and snow? Why do hockey skates slide so nice on the ice? What's going on there? And so we cover all that stuff. And so it was a kind of a holistic approach. And I always told them, now when you're done with this, make sure you give this to your mother, because she'll take care of it and you'll have it. and so I did this for over 20 years. And it was the most fun classes I taught. And I taught a lot of classes over the years, mostly boat building. And so anyway, what I'm doing here is I'm showing you slides that are related to the toboggan class. Some of the other classes we'd have was like the logging bateau, that they would take logs down the Pigeon River in the day. And I'd have Edwin Thorson would come to that, dressed up in the same outfit that he wore when they drew the last log drive down the Pigeon River in 1939, before the war. And we talk about why boats are shaped the way they are, and flotation, and go through a whole list of all the different related subjects related to that. And then there was what else did we do? We did ski making. Everyone made a little pair of skis, model skis. What was it? The other one was the herring skiff. Tommy Eckel would come in, and he would talk about you know, the right kind of herring skiff. It had to be just even with his pocket, so he could lean over. It had to be, you know, size just right. And we built a full-sized one that was like a 1940 vintage herring skiff that he used on Lake Superior. And of course, you know anything about Tommy, you know, I spent quite a bit of time with him drawing up what that skiff looked like, because there was pictures, there was drawings, there was his conversations, and with brother Dick, and got it all done, and he wouldn't look at it until it was done. Okay. Had it all done. Tom, come over, take a look at this. He said, that's not it. That's not anything like that. So there's always dealing with Tommy. And he was neighbors at North House, you know, for years. And we had a lot of fun with Tom, though. But anyway, these are photos that I'm going to be showing you today. All the kids saw this that were in the toboggan class. And it was fun because I would talk about, you know, the folks up there, and some of the relatives, the grandchildren, their grandparents were in the images, and it was really exciting for them. And so this is kind of a little trip back in time for me, and it's always fun to talk about this stuff because it's good to remember these things about people that you've known, that you've had a lot of fun with, that were meaningful relationships. And so one of the things I was going to mention here. I can't think of what it is, but I guess I could say that a big reason why I got to know people up on SAG is because I made a birch bark canoe years ago, and I was paddling. I was going to paddle from here to Ely. I was by myself, and I was going through a swamp lake into Otter Track. Take a hard left when you go through the narrows at Otter Track, and I didn't know Ben Ambrose at the time, but I met him that day. This is like 45 years ago now, and I saw this little character on a floating dock, and he was throwing minnows, and a loon was catching the minnows. And I paddled over to him and introduced myself, and he said, "Where did you get that canoe?" And I said, "Well, I made it." And the first thing he said was, "You know, we used to buy birch bark canoes from two old Ojibwe ladies that built them just where the hospital is now. And we paid $50 for a canoe." He says, "It's unbelievable." And I said, "Well," we talked a little bit, and I said, "Well, you know, where's a good place to camp on?" He said, "Well, you're staying right here." I thought, wow, this is really getting interesting, because, you know, I know people like Ben that were like that. I mean, we'd go buy furs from a guy by the name of Bicycle Pete when I was with my grandpa. Great big tall lumbering guy, the big tall stepping guy, you know. And what was the other one? The other guy's name was Machine Gun Jacobson. Was another fur buyer. And he talked this. He talked really fast all the time. And so they called him Machine Gun. and so I was used to being around these real kind of really different people that didn't fit in. They were off, and they were kind of out there. And so it was like, wow, this is the real deal. And I was looking around his homestead there, and geez, he had a little water tower up there. He had, you know, that he pumped water up into, and he had this beautiful garden. The soil was hauled in by Duluth Pack it was Iowa soil that was trucked up, dumped off, and he hauled it all in with a canoe and a backpack and made this beautiful garden. It was just amazing, and he really liked me, and it was just so great, because it was like, wow, I can really get to know this guy and have some fun together. But he was a hermit, very clearly a hermit, and he liked to be alone. So you didn't hang around. I mean, whenever I went out there, I always made sure I was, you know, making a canoe paddle or something, because then, you know, I'd have to go away, because he had about as much human contact as he could stand. I understand that completely, and so I'd go disappear into the back bay. We had this nice little camp in the back bay that had a picnic table and a tarp over it, and there was cupboards on one end of the picnic table. And carved in the on the surface of the table were the names of Stan Mikita and Bobby Hull and Leo LaPlante, all Blackhawk hockey players. He was a hockey fan from the word go. So it's like, wow, this is really quite a place. Look at all these names here, and they'd fly in, and he'd take care of them, and so it was through Ben that I met a lot of folks on SAG, and what an introduction. I mean, Ben would always say, I was the only guy in the world that still knew how to make canoes, birch bark canoes, which wasn't true. There was plenty of them, but you always had to deal with the Ambrose factor, truth factor, as his daughters called it, and that was he'd mix up his millions and billions and trillions and stuff like that, and he was alone a lot, so there wasn't a whole lot of inputs, going on. But he did keep up with the news because he had a radio, and I would go in there. Well, back up a little bit. He said, I want that canoe and I want you to make another one for me. So Bonnie and Holly can both have birch bark canoes. I can leave that for them. And he says, I'll give you 10 acres of land in Sweet Girl Bay up by Hopeland.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa, now we're talking. But here we go back to the Ambrose truth factor. And he only had 1/10 of an acre. I went down to the courthouse. Yeah, it's 0.10, Hansen. You got had, So I was sitting there eating humble pie with the folks down there, and so, I went up there a couple weeks later and I said, you don't have 10 acres land on it, is what they say in the courthouse, and you only have 1/10 of an acre. He said, those rotten sons of bitches on it. and so it's like, oh, well, what's today here, I give him the canoe. I mean, it's worth the admission to Ben's world, And so, I was really lucky to meet Ben and to be introduced to all the wonderful people up on SAG. It was a very special community of people up there that were very, very loving, and they're good folks, just salt of the earth. And so part of the little toboggan class that I taught, I wanted them to introduce another world, another place. And part of that was, who are your grandparents? Can you tell me anything about your grandparents? I'd ask these questions. And a lot of them didn't know anything about their grandparents, which is why, I would pull out pictures of my grandparents, and I'd talk about my grandparents. And so sort of give them permission. And then when a student, that's my grandmother, or they felt such great pride. It was really nice to see that. And so these are the slides that I think it was 4th grade class that saw this stuff for over 20 years, from Grand Portage down to Tofty, and anyone in between that was homeschooled was invited. And so that's what I'm going to show you. Now, here's the thing. If you have any thoughts about or any inputs on the people that you see here, please speak up. There's a lot of stories, and I'm interested in hearing those stories, because these stories are big medicine for us all. And so you don't have to say or raise your hand or anything, just blurt it out. Say what you got to say, and we'll move on. So, make sense?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Lights?
Mark, are you running the deal or
I can run.
Yeah.
Actually, here you go.
Maybe it'll even reach, huh? Okay, so I was out in New Hampshire giving a talk, teaching out there, and I gave a talk on some work I was doing up in Nipigon with the caribou count up there years ago, and maybe I'll just sit down. I had to quick get the slideshow presentation set up, and so I had slides that were arranged in all kinds of directions, and there's a bunch of highbrow people there, and there was one where I'm skiing downhill on a lake, and I was telling them about how exceptional the lakes are in Canada, and they laughed their butts off on that. Well, this is LaPlante. He was kind of he's from Grand Portage, and he ran the mail to Isle Royale for years. And of course, I never met him, and I don't quite know why this slide is in here, but he was sort of the John Bear Grease further up the trail. And Anyway.
It's hard to hear you. You're
Oh,
talking-
oh,
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and stand?
oh. Should I stand?
Yep.
Or
Can I-
face us
can I
when you
get up?
talk. If you face us when you talk, it'll be
Why don't you do it?
I can do it.
I'll be over here.
there you go.
Yeah, there we go. And so, yeah, do the next one. See what's up on the next one. These kind of fell out of order a little bit because we had some little problem with the projector earlier. Yeah, this is a picture of Ben. This was probably in the 30s. Ben was a World War I veteran, and never quite got much information out of Ben related to his years in France. But you know, you don't walk away from the horrors of war and not be affected, and I think that may have been why he was reclusive. He probably saw too much gore in his time. He never talked about it, other than the fact that he was really glad to find such a beautiful spot in Ottercrack. After those years, he ran away from home when he was 14, and his mother died, and his father married another lady, and she was kind of a severe woman. And before he left, he threw a hornet's nest into a bag and then threw it into the bedroom where his stepmother was sleeping, and never saw her again. Ben was a tough guy. He was a pretty amazing guy. There's lots of stories that I've been told by Art and Irv Benson and whatnot over the years because I knew him. But I only knew him for 2 years. He died in '82 and I met him in '80. But I got in there as often as I could. Maybe you can do another slide. I think the next one is Ben. Yeah, here's another. This is up on McFarland Lake. You can see the big ridge up there. This is McFarland Lake. And there was a guy who was, they call him a squaw man. His name is Kugler, I think. Rob, you know about this guy?
Yeah. He became the commissioner, but he murdered a guy.
Or that was rumored.
No, he did.
He did kill a guy.
Self-defense.
Well, this was, Benny hauled in a wood stove, and I think it was Kugler who moved in, because Ben was roaming all over the Northwoods, and he came and saw that it was being occupied, and he said, well, okay, it's all yours, and left. And then we moved on to Ottercrack. Here's Ben. I'm not sure the location. I think this is Harry Hummich. Anybody know anything about Harry Hummich? He was up on SAG. Anybody? A good friend of Ben's. I think also a veteran, from what I remember from our conversations. And but you can see Ben, incredibly tough guy. He liked to go into town in the summer, 4th of July for sure, and play softball and dance with the best looking women he could find. And he would walk straight into town as the crow flies.
Wow.
And he said that his clothes were rags by the time he got to town. He had a fresh set of clothes in the backpack that he had left alone. He just hoof it, maybe go around the lake, but straight. And I believed him. Anyone hauling a whole truckload of dirt and pack it in to Ottercrack, that's impressive. Yeah, next. Oh, here's another picture of Ben. Got a little bandolera there. Next. Here he is, coming out of somewhere. Could have been any number of places. He would get some of his supplies. It was a some of you may know this about the store up on the Canadian Pacific, on top of the Quetico. Hantala something. It was a general store that all the people that worked on the railroad would get groceries from and materials. That was the closest trip. And that was before there was a road up here, before Blankenberg's cut that and the county put the road through. So this was a lot of how he was packing stuff in and out, is just a dump line over the head and off he would go. And he wasn't very big. So he and I were the same size. And so not like some of the other, like Harry Hummich, he had long legs. It was easier to go snowshoeing when he had longer legs and whatnot. Yeah, go ahead, next slide. And this is somewhere on Seagull, and Ben here is holding a bear cub. And so is the guy in the middle there. Now I don't know who these. I was told the names of these two guys, but I don't remember who they are now. Ben also had all these photographs in a drawer in his wife and daughter's cabin that he built for them. Yeah, so this was kind of a rare moment when he was being somewhat nurturing of a bear. He hated bears. And I remember one time I got into Swamp Lake before you get into Otter Track, and he just shot a bear, and he always shot him in the belly. He says that way they bury themselves. So he was tough. He was tough. And his funeral service, I went to the funeral service. The Forest Service packed in a bunch of us to go to Ben's memorial service. Across our track in that big bluff, just by McLaren Lake, a bear sat and was looking at all of us huddled on his property. I just thought, well, that just is perfect. This bear is probably saying, that son of a bitch is finally dead. He was, because they go and they just rip his place apart, and that happened anything. Because he would leave for periods of time. There's stories that are told where Ben would go down and get some water out of the lake and see a set of otter tracks and not come back for 2 days. And here the family's there and there are people there to, get together and he'd be gone and, when was he going to show up? No one knew. I mean, he was a different cat all the way around. Yeah, here he is with a couple of deer, and these are all photographs that I got from Bonnie when I told her what I was doing with the kids, and she was excited about that. So I got what I got, and so these are what you're seeing. And some of these images are also at the museum, and even better ones at the museum. And here he is hauling ice because he did some guiding, especially with when the Blackhawks hockey team wanted to go fishing, he was on it. And it was right off of here is where there's the floating dock is just to the right here, or maybe you're right, where I first met Ben. And yeah, that was his ice house. It was all work. And he did carry a camera. A fair bit of the time. You can see the little pull string and he's holding up a beaver there. And he did get pinched. It was well before the war, and I think it might have been the guy that pinched him was Jack Linkletter. I don't know if you've read the book that Tim Cochran wrote, Making the Carry. Well, here it is. Here, they got a copy of this at Chik-Wauk. They're selling it, and it's a really good book about a just unbelievable character who was very wise in the way of he was a half-breed. He was Scot and he was Cree. Well, as far as I've read, and so I think he's the guy that pinched Ben for trapping out of season, beaver out of season. And so Ben always said that he got his college education at the jail in Duluth. And that building's still there. It's a brownstone building right on Superior Street. You've all seen it. You can't miss it. I think it's like a restaurant now. But he spent 3 months there, and he met a lot of crazy people. And he was glad to get out of there. But beaver trapping. And there's another picture of with a bear. He got a bear
Yeah.
draped over his shoulder, taking a picture of himself. And, you know, yeah. Oh, this is a woman by the name of Shabagishigo. She was a lady from Basswood. She's blind. She's a blind woman. And Dinah Matson knew Shabagishigo. She must have died back in like the early 30s, mid 30s, something like that. I don't know exactly what's there, but something like that. And she knew where the minerals were in the Quetico and in the Boundary Waters. Do you know something about this, Mark?
I've heard he was quite the prospector, and I was always looking for.
Yeah. Well, he would roam around with her. She would sit up in the bow of the canoe, and she could barely see. She must have had macular degeneration or something, but she knew what lake she was on. She could get a sense of that, and you know, she knew all the name lakes, the Ojibwe, Anishinaabe names of the lakes up there. And he was kind of she was you know, an important person in his efforts to discover minerals. And of course, he was prospecting. He wanted to make money, and so that's Shabagishigo. And that's the way everyone pronounced it. I couldn't tell you, you know, what the spelling would be, but I thought I would include that in the photos because she was an important character, and she's from the Basswood folks, further to the west. Now that one's going to need a little focus. Can you focus that a little bit, Mark? Yeah, I got this image from a Historical Society image, and that's Ben up by the front tires, and then there's Dinah Matson, and I believe that's Georgie Plummer, and then there's Vi, Benny's wife. And this is a truck that Ben bought. I believe that was during the war years. And Ben said he went through the ice a couple of times. Dinah said that truck went through the ice 3 times. And the way they would get it out is they would chop a round hole in the ice, the good solid ice, and they would jump down and they would tie a chain onto the front bumper, and they would put an arm on the log, wrap the chain around it, and they would pull it out by walking.
Oh my
It was like prying it out. And she said, yeah, went through the ice 3 times, all in about the same place. You know, they were just so resourceful. And I've heard of people. There's a YouTube video of some Russian guys that, you know, that's how they get it. And I thought, wow, that's how Ben did it too. You know, it kind of makes sense. You got the leverage, and you got the one end of the log stuck in the mud on the base, and you've got your other fulcrum where the ice is. And anyway, that is a little bit about that. And then here's a plane that Ben crashed up on Sag. It was a Jenny, World War II. You could get these things. They were outlawed in 1932. They were outlawed, but Ben was probably trying to keep up with Frank Powell, who was flying and learned how to fly over in Winton or in Ely. Winton, I think no, it was Winton. The airport. It was an airport in Winton at the time. And so anyway, I don't know. I think probably Frank Powell got the pieces here. He never flew after that. Oh, here's a picture of Ben when I knew him, and yeah, he's quite an interesting fellow. He was a Reagan man all the way. He was a Republican to the soles of his feet, and anyway, he was a lot of fun. Next. Oh, another picture of Ben. Yeah, keep going. Oh yeah, here's his garden on Outer Track. There's really good photographs at the museum of his gardens. You should check it out. And there's a nice video of Ben over there as well that I encourage you to see it. And back behind there is the back bay where I stayed when I was up there. And I was up there in the summer and the winter, and always welcome. And of course, whenever you went to Ben's, the bottle would come out. Because he always wanted to know what, how's Tumpsy Johnson doing, how's Mildred, he wanted to know all about what was going on in town, and if there was any gossip, he was all in, and so we had lots of it. And also, Jacobson, the game warden from Ely, I met him there a couple of times, and he and Ben were good buddies, and that was back when you could drive a snow machine back there. You had a winter portage. You missed the Monument Portage run, and so when after I signed off on my first visit there, Ben said, "Well, take the Square Stern Grumman," and I got a little 3-horsepower Johnson on there. He said, "Go ahead and take that," and he gave me a blue baseball cap. It was wool, and he says, "From now on, you come in. You just drive in. They'll think you're me." So I was motoring down the lake illegally, and Ben was like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine." And so I motored in there for, I don't know, quite a few times. I was in there and just kept it at Chik-Wauk, and I would call Don Anzenauer before I'd go up to. And then he'd radio Ben, "Does he need anything?" Well, there's always a few jugs of booze that he needed, so you get that, and then when any other staples, like hardware nails or stuff like that, because he was pretty well stocked in there, and so it was a lot of fun because it was just he hated the Forest Service, when they told him he had to leave, he said, "Oh, okay," he says, "but bring your guns because mine will all be loaded. And if you step on the dock, there's going to be a bunch of green dead uniforms laying on the dock." And Humphrey found out about this, according to Dana Matson and Herb Benson. He knew a thing or two about what was going on up there and was listening to the news and whatnot. And they said, "No, he will shoot them if they step on the dock. If they try to get him out of there, there'll be blood." And he didn't care if he died. And being a World War I veteran, he knew where to shoot people. And he was a good shot. And so I think they listened to that. Well, anyway, it was a different world, altogether different. And so, yeah, that's that. What else we got there? Oh yeah, here's Art Matson there on the left, and Val, his wife. And you got a string of walleyes there. This is probably in the 30s. I don't know for sure, but it looks about like that. And Val was a professor at the junior college in Ely, and she kind of had enough after they had the 2 girls. She sort of had enough, and they moved into town. The girls and Val moved into town, and then the 2 girls would spend the summer with Ben, and that's the way that worked until he died. She died previous. Ben said she smoked too many cigarettes, and that's what happens when you drink too many cigarettes. So that was the end of that relationship, and but the daughters still went in there, and I met them at the funeral for the first time, and they're like, "Oh, you're Mark Hansen, yeah." And so they said, "Well, you keep the Grumman canoe and the motor," and it was up to Chik-Wauk, and we'll give you $700 for the canoe. I said, "Radio," and so that was a consummation of the deal, and I gave the 1/10 of an acre to the county. A 1/10 of an acre is only about a quarter the size of this room. and plus when we were cleaning, there's a little log cabin on it, so Wendy and I were cleaning the log cabin going, "Well, geez, they got 10 acres land here somewhere," and all the neighbors got mad. because all the property lines in Hovland were probably done by alcoholics.
Yes.
So whenever you ever bought a piece of property, neighbors would get mad. So I was like, get it out of my life, right? Yeah. Oh, yes. This guy here in the center is Eddie Jackson. And I was, when I first got to Cook County, I took a job as an activity director in a nursing home. And it was a part-time job, but it was just full of these really interesting people. So what I did was, I wasn't going to toss the ball back and forth with old people. So what I suggested is that I'll do biographies on these people. I'll get to know them and I'll write a biography. And so I did these biographies, and Abe Tofty did artwork. And so I did these articles. Abe did a likeness of all them, and Abe is a really good artist. And I think they're sitting down in the Historical Society now. Hospital administrator was very encouraging of this, and he left a little while after. Well, I was there for a year, and then because my education was over with, I'd been to graduate school and was pretty much ready to be working for social services, and a job came up, so I had to take it because I had a son who had some real health problems, and so I needed the insurance. But Eddie Jackson was the second white guy born in Cook County.
Oh my God.
And he was well into his 90s. He would lay in the bed like this. His mind was sharp. He would lay in his bed like this. And Henning Johnson from Loon Lake was, anybody here knew Henning Johnson?
I knew Annie. Yeah.
He talked like this. He says, the son of a bitch in the bed next to me. He's trying to kill me. and he'd just say, I'm gonna whack that son of a bitch. And Henning Johnson, one morning, and I don't know why they kept in the same room, because they hated one another. And I walked in the room, and Henning Johnson had been beaten with a cane.
Oh no.
A big shiner and whatnot. And I walked in there, and Eddie's sitting there with a big smile on his face. I got him, Anyway, these were cranky old men. And they probably went into the nursing home too early because they just forgot how to take care of themselves. And so Eddie was on the Hovland dock when Ben Ambrose showed up, because Ben was a stoker on the America when he first showed up here. And he I don't know what he thought of Ben, other than the fact that he was kind of hard to believe, because Eddie was very reticent. He was just a hardcore woodsman. I mean, his brother Clayton said he was the most unreasonable man who ever crawled up on 2 feet. Clayton said, I'd like to learn how to trap beaver. Okay, always left at midnight so no one knew what your business was. Big deal, right? It wasn't much for socializing and whatnot. Clayton said, we walked all the way to Brule Lake from Grand Marais in 2 days with just a little bit of sleep. What did we have? Some, a little bit of green tea and some dried whatever. And they walked all the way, and he said he was totally exhausted and forgot about beaver trapping for good. And Clayton was a good guy. Did anybody know Clayton Jackson here? Oh yeah. Hey, Clayton was a good guy. I really enjoyed his company. And then there was Fred Jackson at Jackson's Cafe.
Oh yeah.
Remember Fred would sit and look through the little window in the back as you were getting your license from his license. Yeah, Eddie was he had lots of history. And I really wish I could remember a lot of it. I remember he told me that when Ben came into this country, it was in the summer, and Eddie followed him for a while into the fall, and he said, yeah, that Ambrose, he says he fell through the ice 3 times because he would stay behind him and watch what he was doing. And he said the 3rd time, he said, I didn't think he was ever going to get out of the ice. I said, you mean to tell me that you'd let him drown like that? And he said, well, if he drowned, he didn't deserve to be in this country. In this country, this area. It was hardcore. Just couldn't really believe it, but that's the way he was. He was on bear track. And had a little camp there. Oh, and here's Art Matson. He was a ranger in the Quetico for quite a few years. He came down from Wollaston Lake. What's it, Saskatchewan? He came down. Anybody know Art Matson? Anybody know his history? He came down from Wollaston Lake with the dog team, and that must have been in the 30s, I think, mid 30s or something like that, or no, before that, I think. What's that?
Early 30s.
Early 30s, yeah, that's probably right. And when Art would tell a story, it was the same story every time he told it. He was, spot on. There was no embellishment in any way. And he was a good friend of Ben's, and Ben introduced me to Art and to Dinah. And this is somewhere up in the Quetico. And there's his camp. You can see he's got a little house up there in the back to keep the wolves out from the hides and whatnot. And, it was a snowy winter, huh?
Yeah.
But Art had long legs, so he was good at tromping through the bush.
One little story about Art, and of course Irvin, after World War II, Irv Benson moved up to Sag, and they worked at Chik-Wauk and then at Tempest, and they ended up living at their island. And Irv, of course, he liked to tell a lot of stories too, and I think they were pretty accurate. But he said that it must have been in the end of the 50s or beginning of the 60s when sorrel boots first came on the market. He said he went downtown and he said he bought a pair of sorrel boots from Howard Joints. And so he was he and Art ran into each other in the winter, and they always notice whatever is going on between when they meet each other. Art immediately saw he had different boots on. And he said, well, what do you have? What kind of boots do you have? And he said, well, they're sorrels. And he said, they're really warm. They're felt liners, and they really are comfortable to wear. And so Art was taking all of this in. And so later on that winter, he went down to Joints. And Howard, he was basically, if you went in to Joints, Howard would grab you, and sometimes you might come out with something other than what you thought you were. But,
Had to buy something.
oh yeah. So anyhow, he bought a pair of sorrel boots, and so they ran into each other later on that winter. And they're looking at each other's boots, and Art has bigger feet than Irv, and Irv said to Art, well, what size boot do you have? And he said, well, I'm a size 10. And he said, well, I'm a size 10 too, and you have a bigger foot than me. Yeah, he said, when I was down at Joints, Irv said, he said, you have to buy a size bigger, so you can, with the felt liners. And he said, didn't he tell you that? He said, yeah. But he said, I wear a size 10. I'm not going to buy a size 11. And so Irv said, well, how does that work out? They feel fine. He said, I just cut the toes off the felt liners.
or if the size you needed was too large and he had in stock, he'd sell you more socks to wear.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, everyone's got some hard joint stories for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here's Art bringing in supplies. We got a couple of stovepipes there, and this dog's name was Whitey, and he was, I don't know if he got supplies from the CP or whether these were coming up from Grand Marais. Probably from Grand Marais. Anyway, that's a road going in. And, oh, here's some pictures. Where'd I get these? I got these from Dina, and these are his brothers. There's Art there, and I don't know the names other than the last one guy down there. His name was Dick, and yeah, they were visiting. Or I don't think his brothers lived in this area. I don't know if anybody knows anything about that. And Justine's in the middle.
Oh.
Justine Kerfoot, and that's let's see, Val is on the left here, and on the right is Georgie Plummer.
Oh, sure.
And I'm not sure where this is. I don't. This the camp he had on Swamper was kind of like this one. But I don't think this is it, but I don't know for sure. And here's Charlie Cook and Art
and George.
Georgie Plummer.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the occasion was, but I got this from Dina. And there's Art with a wolf. And there was a bounty on those. Well, he was. I don't know, what was a bounty on wolves back in the day? Anybody know?
Red Strum used to give $50.
$50?
Oh, yeah, it was a little bit, that would have been more money. Yeah, that's why they killed all the wolves.
Yeah, but Art, he had lots of camps all through Hunter's Island. And do you know where any of those camps were, Jim? You ever been to any of his camps? Probably all fell down.
Greenwood Lake on the north of the park, or east side of the park, into one of those.
And this is a boat that I rebuilt. This is Art. I'm not sure where this is. I think Dennett told me, but I don't remember where this was. But, yeah. And yeah, it's a nice boat. It was a Peterborough. Oh, this was a what do they call it? Wanigan. A Wanigan that was he bought from the logging companies that came through, and this is where they fed everyone. And Art bought it from the fellow that was running the camp, and they had, I don't know, somebody got the gator that would climb over the top of the logs and pull them into rafts. And anybody know anything about the logging up on site during the day? And then they had people stay in this Wanigan when they needed a place early on before they had cabins built for customers that were fishermen coming in. And that's still there too. And here's a picture of Dina with Art on the dock. Dina was just a wonderful person. There's got to be Dina stories here in this group. Anybody know Dina? She was just the most compassionate person. I really liked her, and I would go visit her whenever I went up to Sag. I would go visit Dina because she was such a sweet lady, and she had a hard life. She lost all of her boys. They all died. Charlie was a little youngster who was, I don't know, he's kind of a toddler. He ran off the end of the dock and drowned. And then David was killed in an accident. It was in California someplace. He was walking on the side of the road and someone smacked him. He was working on a car, getting the car parked, something like that. I don't remember exactly. And then a block on the other side. Who?
Chris.
Chris. He died in a motorcycle accident right down by North House.
Oh.
Right down by the, what do you know about it?
No, I thought he was in the military and was in an accident. I'm not really sure, but they lived right behind us in town. And so Dinah, when the kids used to homeschool kids, and when they started to get older, they needed, she didn't feel she could homeschool them anymore, so they all moved. There was an old logger lived behind our house, and it just had an outhouse, woodshed, and it was probably 20 by 25 feet was the size of the place. So she moved down there with 5 kids and would spend all winter down there so they could go to school. And then they had no running water, so they had a hose that came from our house, and she'd have a couple 40-gallon drums in the building that she filled up, and she must have cooked like 30 loaves of bread a week, and so she'd always come over after cooking her homemade bread, and she'd bring us a couple loaves of bread. And I can always remember as a kid, just we used to store-bought bread, you know, and getting that homemade bread, it was just unbelievable. But like you say, I mean, she was a hard worker. When it came the end of the school year, actually Art had it pretty easy. He was up at Sag all by himself and trapping, and you know, she did the bulk of the work. And then come spring, when they were getting ready to have guests, they moved back up to Sag. And then they had the American plant, so she would cook all the meals for all the guests and everything. And so she'd go from that setting to Sag and be working, cooking for everyone and cleaning all the cabins and getting everything ready. So she was never complained. You know, she was always good spirits.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
I got on the dock years later, and Dinah ran down and said, Mark, I found my baby. And she fathered a son with Benny.
yeah,
And his name was Peter.
yeah.
Did you ever meet Peter?
No, but I know he met the whole family. He went up for a reunion up on Sag. I think she gave him up for adoption.
Yeah, Val didn't want this baby in the neighborhood.
well,
She was
Dennis
living with Ben
maybe.
at the time, and thought that was
And so,
not appropriate for that baby to be around.
yeah. And
So he started doing research. He said he wasn't looking for a parent, because then you get nowhere. The door's slammed shut. So he was doing some kind of research on the background of a certain group of people, and you know, he was a computer. You didn't meet him.
I didn't meet him. No.
Okay, I talked to him a little bit one day. I only met him I just met him one day, but she was so happy because here he steps on the dock, and it's like Ben stepping on the dock. He looked just like him. He was bow-legged. He had that kind of squinty eyes, and I thought, oh yeah, this is Ben's kid for sure. And it was quite a story, and I don't know if many people know about it. I've heard it elsewhere, so which is why I feel free to say something about it now. But
Yeah.
it was you know, one of those tough stories.
Not-
Never met his dad, of course. And, no, it's just you
So
know,
I think
kind
he
of
went
a lot of
with it.
tragedy too. A lot of really difficult times. It wasn't easy. Yeah, well, here's Ben. Geez, I wonder if Ben is shined up on that picture. And there's Val with a cigarette and Art. This is a birthday party for Ben. I don't know what year it was. Oh, here's I think that's Val sitting in some kind of little hut there, got for a winter. There's Val in the trout. Yeah, you can take it. Oh, this is interesting. This is Mary Ottertail and Jack Powell. Now, no one in here is old enough to remember them, but this was Frank and Bill's and what was the other son? Mike. That was their folks, and they were on Saginaw, and they. He couldn't speak Ojibwe or Anishinaabe, and he couldn't speak English, but they were married for, many years. I think there's another picture of them. Next picture, so it might be a little bit better. Yeah, here's a picture of them. And then Tempest was their daughter, and Irv told me that they had a team of moose that was doing some skidding for them, getting logs out of the woods. And they just got old enough where, you heard this story? Anybody heard this story? Those moose started getting pretty ornery and hard to control, as you probably guess. And well, they shot and ate them.
Oh my gosh!
And they got all their groceries off the CP line, and I wish I could remember the name of that store. It'd be interesting to know what that history is.
What else?
Their grandson, Milt.
Yeah, when they get too big.
He has, I think it's through WTIP.
What's that?
Their grandson, Milt, and his dad was Mike. He was
Right.
the oldest. And they moved off of Sag. The kids all grew up there, and then they moved on to Grand Prairie. But he has some stories that have been recorded. I think you can go online and telling about growing up, and being up on
Well,
Sag.
Milt did the recording.
Yeah, Milt.
Oh, yeah.
They recorded Milt.
Oh,
And he
nice.
talks about one time, because they lived on Sag, and Mary and Jack were on Saginaw, and so they would walk over every so often and visit their grandparents. And Milt's mom, she was actually full-blooded Chippewa also. And so her and Mary could talk. And Milt said he was about probably 7 or 8, and they were inside talking, drinking coffee. And he said he got this little willow stick, and his grandma had this bird feeder out on the deck. And so he started swishing this willow stick and knocking these birds down. And his grandma came out, and all these dead birds were laying on the deck. And so she looked at him and she said, "Go inside and get a pan." So he went inside and he got a pan and he came out. She said, "Okay, now you pick up all those birds, put them in that pan." And then she made him pull all the feathers off. And then put water in there and boil them up. And he said he had to eat them.
Oh my God.
And she said, "You don't kill anything unless you have a use for it."
Yeah.
And so he was saying his mom was actually kind of mad at the grandma, but he said he learned a pretty good lesson.
Oh, here's Mike and Sophie. Oh, did anyone know Sophie? Mike? Either Mike?
Oh, yeah. And knew Sophie.
I knew them when they were in a nursing home.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Mike was pretty well stroked out in the nursing home. Wasn't communicative, but Sophie was, and Sophie was angelic. What I remember about her is just being one of the sweetest people. And she wore clothing that was kind of like the old women that you see in photographs from Chik-Wauk City back in the day, where she had like all black clothing and I really didn't get to know her too much. She pretty much stayed close to Mike in the nursing home, tending to him, you know, wiping the saliva off his face. Did you know Mike?
Not very good. I knew the other two brothers real well.
Well, they lived in town.
Yeah, they lived in town.
Yeah.
The problem, because we were on SAG more often than downtown.
You knew Bill and Frank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, here's Mike hauling a cow in for, I think this was for Jack, because he liked cream in his coffee. And
Didn't work out too well.
well, he got it in there, and then the cow would pull the boats over the portage.
1 week of milk, I think.
And I think they got that. I think they got that cow over in Winton, didn't they? I think it was Winton where they got that cow. And there's Sophie in the back, and that Shabagishigo there, just a little head, and Milt's up in the bow. Yeah. Now, who is the guy with his hand on the dock? Who would that be? You know, Steve?
It wouldn't be Frank's son, would it?
Frankie?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's Frankie. He looks native. Whereas Frankie would definitely look like he was Caucasian.
Yeah. I don't know.
Do you remember when Frankie died?
I don't remember. I heard about it.
Well, he died in like 58 or something, didn't he? Didn't he, John?
Yeah, that's where they lived right up where Frank and Betsy were up beginning of the Northeast Army.
Yeah.
And they were coming back from visiting, I think there were some young girls down at end of the Trail Lodge, and him and Dickie were, they took separate boats and went down. When they came back, it was kind of rough, and they figured that his motor quit right by Windy Point. It's a real rough part of the lake. And because when they found the boat, it was in neutral, and it swamped and he drowned.
Yeah.
And that kind of ended the relationship between Bill and Frank, unfortunately, after that, because nothing happened to Dickie. He made it back fine. And so I think there was some hard feelings between the families, unfortunately, after that event.
There's another picture of Mike. He was fishing out of Grand Marais on Lake Superior. Oh, and this is Tempest. You know, I didn't really get the chance to talk to Tempest too much because she was pretty quiet, and of course Irv would dominate the conversation all the time. But you know, they would beat the eggs with the drill presses sitting right out in the open. And it was very much Irv Benson's, you know, realm. Did anybody here know Irv? There's got to be a few hands that know Irv Benson. You know,
That's it.
but she couldn't read or write. Is what Irv told me. What's that?
Who is this?
Oh, this is Tempest Benson. This is Mary Otter Tail and Jack Paul's daughter, the youngest of all the kids, and very, very good in the forest, and she was a trapper and was very good at what she did.
She had 3 daughters. I think
Yep.
probably the Betty has, probably over at, Bill would know if her book is at Chik-Wauk.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
The one that Carol Desane wrote?
no, I think Betty Powell, I think.
Oh, Betty wrote a book.
Was that Life in Two Worlds?
Oh.
That's an interesting book,
Yeah.
because
Good book.
Tempest was alone raising these 3 daughters, and that's when Irv, came up, and so then he basically married Tempest
After the war.
after the war. Yeah, she had the 3 daughters,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, very sweet lady.
That's the last line.
What's that?
That's the last line.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I remember.
So I have just a couple comments, Mark.
Yeah,
When you're talking about boots, so there were no stores up here, of course, but one of my favorite pair of boots as a kid were the hand-me-downs from the Madsons, because David was in my class, and most of them were older.
uh-huh.
And so we passed around a lot of clothes,
Huh.
because, we hardly ever went to town. And why buy new clothes when you can get them used?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then Tempest had a dog team. So when I was little, she gave us one of her lead dog's pups.
Oh,
So our first dog when I was a kid was Waysha. And it was an Ojibwe word, but I don't recall what it means.
yeah, she ended her days living in a nursing home in Thunder Bay. Yeah, but look at that lynx there, huh? Big long.
That's a big mix.
Mark,
Yeah,
you would know Benny and how he dressed.
yeah,
He always had a wool felt hat,
yep.
a union suit, wool shirt, suspenders, wool pants, winter and summer, and it was unbuttoned down to about mid-chest in summer. And the story was, in the winter, when he was going to meet somebody, he'd be all buttoned up, but before he got there, he'd open up the shirt and get a little chest.
Or take off his hat too, that was the other thing I heard. So look at how tough I am, I don't have to wear a hat. Well, Archie Kirk told me a story that he and Dickie Paul had fixed up an old Harley Davidson motorcycle, and they put bolts through the tires, between the inner tube and the tire. And they were running up and down Sag at 60 miles an hour with this Harley Davidson motorcycle. And they meet Benny at Second Bay. And they say, and Benny's pulling a toboggan, and he said, "You want a lift, Ben? We can pull you." Yeah, I'll take a lift. And we're gonna go all the way down to, I don't know, Arts or something. And Dickie was driving, and he just opened it right up. And they were going 60 miles an hour. They were down. Archie's on the back behind. He said, "We were really whipping down the lane." And Benny's back there. The shirt's wide open. The hat is gone. His little backpack is gone. And he's signaling like, "Stop, stop." And of course they go a little bit further. They dropped him off at American Point, and he said, "I'm good, fellas. Thanks for the ride." I guess he scared him half to death.
Blankenberg's told me a story about him. Back in the 20s, he would live track animals that the zoos run. So in the wintertime, he'd take his balloon pack, half filled or something, and he'd walk through the woods till he crossed the track of an animal he's looking for, and he'd track it down. And be gone 2-3 days with this half of the loose pack full of stuff and trapped in a gunny set, live trapped in a gunny set. He was tough. The other thing I learned about him, he had his old blue pickup at the landing. My wife and I had an outfitting business around. And before ice up, he'd make a trip to Grand Bray to get some supplies and come back. And I realized we had a moose license one year back when they had a moose hunting season, and we went down to the west end of Sag, and we found the tent platform there. And we also found a stand up in the trees, and I realized that what he'd do, he'd go down there before ice up, because nobody could come and find him. The game wardens couldn't come and get him when the ice was freezing. And he'd shoot a moose, and when the ice froze, he'd haul it down to his place, and he was good to go for the winter.
Well, the joke my dad was a Lutheran minister, and my grandfather was, and the joke was about the visiting pastor asked the usher, how long do you want me to speak? And the usher said, well, you can talk as long as you want. We're going home to noon. I don't want to cut it off here. Anyway. This wouldn't happen without Steve. He was the one that was bird dogging me. So,